Bonjour and good morning. Welcome to WASA Distance Education Center and PLAR Science. We're into the second class, or the last class for PLAR Science this week. So today is Wednesday, December 4th. After this week, we only have 2 more weeks, and then we will be off for the Christmas holidays. All students are welcome to join the radio classes. Students that are applying or reapplying for PLAR, you can contact our PLAR counselor, Mary, at 807-737-1488. Her extension is 2224. Or you can email her at mary.mclaughlin@nnec.on.ca. If you're looking to register for non-PLAR courses, so senior courses or grade 9-10 courses, you may contact our education counselor here, Michelle. Same phone number for WASA. Her extension is 2225, or you can email her at michelle.diston@nnec.on.ca. We also have an online application form, so if you don't have the hard copy, you can go to the link for the WASA sign up. All you need is an email so that you can complete the application. WASA will also continue to hold 2 student draws, so one for students who earn a credit, so for term 1B, and then also those students that submit work, their names will also be entered. So make sure that you're submitting your work to your teacher to be entered into the draw. Students that are working on multiple courses, you will have your names entered for each course or subject that you are submitting work for. So for example, if you're working on your PLAR Science, PLAR History, PLAR Geography, during term 1B, then you will have your name entered for those different subjects. Students can also register for IL courses at any time during the school year. However, you have to complete your course on or before June 13th, 2025. And as we have been mentioning to students, you have choices now for PLAR. You can have the option of either completing the key questions from the lessons, or you can choose to take the culminating activity. So for PLAR Science, you can do the key questions if you want from the lessons, or you can ask me for the PLAR Science culminating activity. Remember, the key questions will help you review important concepts and prepare you for the culminating, while the culminating will assess your overall understanding of the material covered in the course. So this is up to you. You can challenge, so meaning that you can do the open book culminating activity instead of the key questions. You may be halfway through PLAR Science. You may be working on lesson 3 chemistry, and then you decide, I think I can, do the open book culminating activity or test. You can just let me know, and then I will send you the culminating activity. So I can send it to you, or I can email it to your DEC. Remember, supervision is not required, so you don't have to be at the learning center. You can take your culminating activity home to complete. Successful students will then receive their equivalent credits, and then you can go on to your senior PLAR and start working on your senior credits. In order to pass the culminating activity, you need to receive 50% and above. So if you get 50, you pass. So 50 and up. If the culminating activity is not passed, then the key questions in the lessons must be completed, and you can retake the culminating activity. Students are permitted several attempts to pass the culminating activity. And if you're still not sure about trying the culminating instead of the key questions, you can ask myself or Bonnie for a sample test so that you can review the format or see the format of the culminating activity. So remember, if you need the PLAR math or English, then you can contact Bonnie, And then science, history, and geography, you can ask for those culminating activities from me. So should you decide to do the key questions for PLAR Science, there are 5 of them. There's the biology, there's the astronomy for lesson 1. Lesson 2 is biology, lesson 3 chemistry, lesson 4 is physics, and lesson 5 is environmental science. If you have previous versions of these lessons and you have started working on the key questions, I will accept the submitted work. What I mean by previous versions is if you have the 20, 23, 24 lessons. So if you have completed those questions or key questions from this version, I will still accept it. You don't need to start from the beginning with the 24-25 school year lessons. If you need extra support or extra help with any of the courses that you're taking through WASA, we do have a YouTube channel. It's called WASA Distance Education Center. We have classes from Term 1A and Term 1B, which is being updated as we complete these courses or these lessons, so as we broadcast it. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you will see here there's the home videos and playlists. So go to the playlist. When you go to the playlist, you will see all the courses that have been uploaded already. So for example, PLAR Science has 5 videos in there already. PLAR Math has 6. The NBV 3E Worldviews and Aspirations of First Nations has 12 videos. ENG 4E Grade 12 English, there's 11 videos. So as you can see, each class or broadcasted class. So let's look at ENG 4E. So if you're clicking on there to watch it, notice that it will tell you what unit and then which lesson, and then it will tell you the key question or the support question that it's discussing within that class. It also shows, see here, if you open this up, it also shows a description of the lesson. So for example, it says Truth and Reconciliation Committee video, changes in Ontario curriculum and the Indian Act. Okay, so that's the name of that or description of that class. If you go to the DCO, so that's the co-op. So you just go to the playlist and then go to DCO 30, then you can look at the playlist for that as well. So don't forget to click the subscribe button so that every time a video is uploaded in there, then you will be notified. If you can't access it because you don't have Wi-Fi or internet, you can also request a USB of classes. So what we'll do then is we'll upload the videos in a flash drive and then we will send that to you. Students or WASA students, if you want an NNEC Schools email, so if you don't want to use your personal email and you want an NNEC Schools email, just let us know. We can activate your email if you do not have one already, or if you forget your password, I can reset it for you, so it doesn't take that long. If you're trying to use your NNEC Schools email and you can't get in, one thing to do first is to sign out of all accounts. So you might have other accounts that are opened, or you might be signed into it, and that's why it's not letting you get in there. But if you try everything else and you still can't get in, then we will reset it for you. Once you have decided whether you're doing the key questions or the culminating, then you can, or once you complete the key questions, or if you decided that you will be doing the culminating, you have to send these out for marking. So make sure that when you send them out, first put your name on it. Even if you're taking a picture of it to send to me, make sure your name is on your paper. You can send it through Facebook Messenger, or you can scan and email it to me. When you're scanning and emailing it, make sure it goes to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. CC it to the teacher that's marking your work. So science, history, geography, you make sure that you CC it to me. Math and English, make sure that it's CC'd to Bonnie. So her email is bosmond@nnec.on.ca, or you can send it on our Facebook Messenger. You can still have your DEC do it for you. If they're able to, they can scan it or fax it for you. If you're in the Sioux Lookout area, you can also drop it off at our office, 74 Front Street. Just knock on the door. And if you have other concerns or questions, make sure that you contact the office or one of us. We're finishing up lesson 2, and I think we might be able to start with lesson 3. We'll see how it goes this morning. So remember, if you have chosen to do the key questions, there are 80 of them. Key questions 1 to 80, and that's from lessons 1 to 5. And if you decide to do the culminating activity, again, let me know and I will send that out to you. So if you do the key questions, here's the mark sheet for students who have chosen to complete the lessons. So you can see it's divided into 5 sections for the 5 lessons. Lesson 1, there are 26 key questions. Lesson 2, we have key questions 27 to 40, so there's 14 of them. The shortest one there is lesson 4, which is physics. There's only 8 key questions, and then lesson 5, environmental science, there are 9. Okay, so make sure you attempt all the key questions if that's what you have decided to do. If not, if you have decided to do the culminating activity, here's the mark sheet for it. So you can see you'll be asked questions for each section. So in this case, section 1 or part A is chemistry, part B is biology, part C astronomy, part D physics, and part E environmental science. And when you submit your culminating activity, you will notice on the bottom of the mark if it's a pass. So in this case, this person received 89%, so it's 50% and above, again, is the passing mark. So here's the last topics that we will be completing in biology. So we will continue with the life processes on page 13. Then we will look at the cell division, in particular mitosis, the cell cycle and the reasons for cell division, the process of cell division, and then the phases or stages of mitosis. So this is what we will be looking at. Our learning goal, I can describe the process of cell division. So keep that in mind as we're doing the lesson. Again, on the cover page of lesson 2 and key questions, all the numbers that you need is there for you in order to get a hold of me. Okay, well, let's quickly review the life processes. So that's on page 13 of your lesson book. Remember, living organisms need to carry out specific activities to stay alive. So these activities are called life processes. So life processes are also the main characteristics of all living things. So if it's a living thing, then they have to have these life processes. Okay, the first one is nutrition. So ingestion is when animals take in food because they cannot make their own and must get it from outside sources. So humans, for example, okay, we have to take in food somewhere else because we don't make it ourselves. Whereas plants are different because they can make their own food through photosynthesis, but they still absorb important materials like water from the soil. So once we take in the food, then we have to digest it. So digestion is the process of breaking down food into forms that can be used by the body. In animals, digestion mostly happens in the stomach and small intestine, but in plants, it occurs in the leaves where food is made. Okay, then we looked at respiration. Now, this is how organisms release energy by combining oxygen with digested food. So this process produces energy along with water and carbon dioxide as waste. Larger animals like birds and mammals, oxygen is taken in through breathing and travels to the lungs. You can see that at the bottom of the slide here. He's taking in air. He's breathing it in, and then you can see how the lungs are expanding there. So from there, the oxygen moves into the blood, which carries it to all the cells in the body where it is used for respiration. On the right-hand side, you can see there's that plant. The oxygen goes into the leaves, and then carbon dioxide goes out. The next life process we looked at is excretion, and this is just how the body gets rid of waste that it doesn't need. One of the waste products, carbon dioxide, another one is water and extra salts. So removing these wastes is important to keep the body working properly. In humans, excretion happens through sweating, breathing out carbon dioxide, urinating, okay, and this is removed, which removes waste filtered by the kidneys. Next is movement. So this is a key characteristic of all living things. So sometimes it's not always easy to see, but movement will help organisms to find food, escape dangers. You can see here the lion is chasing the zebra. And another factor for movement is so that animals are able to reproduce. So animals show movement clearly by searching for food, finding shelter, or avoiding threats. Plants also move, but in less obvious ways. So you can see a picture here, like growing toward the light. Okay, that's movement. Then we looked at sensitivity. So all living things can sense and respond to their surroundings. And that's important for survival. Animals use their 5 main senses. So sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. So they use these senses to detect changes, like finding food, okay, or avoiding predators. Plants can also sense their environment, and we just looked at that, like detecting sunlight and growing toward it, or sensing water and growing their roots in that direction. Okay, so that was the last one that we looked at for life process. So we will continue now. If you turn to page 15, the next one is growth. So all living things grow, including humans. They grow and develop based on their DNA. So we talked about DNA already. So growth happens when cells get bigger or increase in number. So in more complex organisms like humans, as cells multiply, they also change into different types. So for example, some cells become skin cells, while others turn into bone, muscle, or other specialized cells. Plants keep growing as long as they have enough food. So most plants start from seeds or tubers and grow quickly to survive. Growth also helps with healing. So trees and shrubs heal injuries by growing new bark or adding layers of wood. Crabs can grow new legs if they lose one. Humans can heal cuts and mend broken bones. Okay, up next is reproduction. And reproduction just means making more living things of the same type. So all living things can reproduce and create more of their kind, but they do this in different ways. Two types of reproduction. One is asexual, that's where an organism can reproduce on its own, and sexual reproduction, where the organism needs a partner. So in animals, common ways to reproduce include giving birth, laying eggs, or asexual reproduction, like the hydra jellyfish, which grow babies directly from their body. In plants, common methods include producing seeds, spores, or asexual reproduction, such as growing from tubers, rhizomes, or runners. So you can see some pictures on the bottom. Animals can be an oviparous or a viviparous. So ovi is laying eggs that hatch outside the body, like chickens, ducks, or snakes, whereas the vivi is giving birth to live young. Eggs develop inside the mother's body. Okay, so that's the end of the life processes. So if you look at on page 16, you can see support question 1. So again, you don't have to submit these for marking. The answers are at the end of the lesson. So in this chart, it says copy the following chart into your notes. Well, you don't have to do that because you have this sheet. And answer the questions by putting a yes or no in the space provided. So it has a bunch of questions, or a list of questions on the left-hand side of the chart. It says, does it have a nucleus? Does it have ribosomes? Does it have mitochondria? And then the next two columns says animal cell or plant cell. So you're trying to distinguish if in the question whether an animal cell has it. So you just put yes or no, and then same thing for the plant cell. So for example, does it have chlorophyll? Animal cell, you should write no. Plant cell, yes. So remember, chlorophyll is what makes the pigment that makes plants or the leaves green. And then number 2, it says match each of the following terms with the most appropriate statement. So A is excretion, B nutrition, C sensitivity, D respiration, E nutrition. Let's look at the most obvious one here. Taking in food, so that would be E. So that would be nutrition. Getting rid of waste would be A, excretion. So these are just sample exercises. Again, you don't have to submit it because the answers are at the end of the lesson. But you can try it and see how well you do with that. So we just finished the life processes, and what I have here is an acronym. It's Mrs. Gren, so MRS GREN. So this is a useful way to remember the 7 life processes that all living organisms must carry out. So we did for astronomy, we use a mnemonic, which is just a clue to help us remember the order of the planets from the sun. Remember we said, my very eager mother just served us nachos. Okay, so that for each letter, it represents the planet. So in this case, Mrs. Gren, so M is for movement, and then R is for respiration, and S is for sensitivity. So that's for the Mrs. part. Then Gren, Gren, is growth, and then R for reproduction, E for excretion, and N for nutrition. Okay, so that just helps you remember the 7 life processes. Okay, it's a clue for remembering it. So you could try that. All right, let's do key questions 34 to 35. So key question 34, it says excretion removes waste products from the body. Okay, so we know that excretion removes waste products from the body. What do you think would happen if waste products built up in the body? So this question is asking your thoughts. So what do you think? Okay, not what the book says, although in the lesson we talked about that excretion removes waste products from the body. So from what you know and from what you have learned in this lesson, what do you think would happen if the waste products were not excreted, if it's built up in the body? So first of all, your answer would be, or you would start your answer off with, I think. Okay, because I'm asking you, what do you think? So I think if waste products or materials built up in the body, then you would tell me what you think would happen. Okay, next is key question 35. Okay, key question 35 says, complete the chart below by identifying and giving a brief description of the 7 life processes. So what you have on the left-hand side are 5 images, and then on the right-hand side shows you the life process and description. So you're just telling me which of the life processes is happening on the image. So the first one, you can see a person there. It looks like there's arrows pointing towards her face, and then there's arrows pointing, leaving her, looks like leaving her mouth. Okay, so what do you think is happening there? Well, if you guessed respiration, then you are correct. So that's all you have to write, is you write the life process and then give a brief description. So in this case, respiration, okay, is the release of energy. The release of energy by combining oxygen with digested foods. So make sure that you are you have the correct page. So that means you should be looking at or reading from pages 13 to 15 to answer this question. So pages 13 to 15 for answering key question 35. Okay, the second one shows different kinds of food. The next picture shows a person, and you can tell that that person is moving. The next one shows a plant, and then the last picture, okay, if you can't read that word, that says urine. Okay, so not all 7 life processes are on that page. There are only 5 there, so you would have to choose the correct one. Okay, let's continue with the rest of lesson 2. Okay, page 17, we are looking at cell division, specifically mitosis. So have you ever wondered how living things grow? Well, your body has trillions of cells, and it all started with just one. So one fertilized egg. So all living things need to grow and reproduce, and this happens through cell division. So cell division is how cells work, and they are controlled by the genetic information stored in the nucleus of each cell. So remember we talked about DNA. It's like a blueprint for how the body will grow. We'll also look at the term chromosome. So this is a thread-like structure that's found in the nucleus of a cell that carries genetic information. So it's made up of DNA, which contains the instructions that control how the cell works and determines things like eye color or height. Chromosomes are passed from parents to their children, and they play an important role in growth and development. So almost every human cell has 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46. Okay, there are exceptions, but almost every human has 23 pairs. Okay, then turn to, still on page 17, the cell cycle. So cells go through a process of growth and change during their lifetime. So it's called the cell cycle. So this either ends with the cell dividing or dying. So the cell has 2 main stages. The first stage is mitosis, and that's when the nucleus divides along with the DNA or the genetic information inside. The second stage is interphase. That is when the cell grows and it prepares for the next division. So interphase happens between each round of mitosis. So remember we talked about where we are going to look at the phases or stages of mitosis. So far we know that organisms are constantly producing new cells. New cells are made in order to grow, and new cells are also made to replace old dead cells. This process of making new cells is what we call cell division. Cell division is happening all the time, and in the average human body, approximately 2 trillion cell division is happening daily. Okay, we're not even aware of it, but it's happening. So let's look at reasons for cell division. So why are cells dividing? Well, in mitosis, or during mitosis, this is when cells need to divide, and it occurs for several important reasons. So the first reason is growth. Remember we talked about all living things grow? Well, all growth in living things happen through mitosis. From the time that we start as a fertilized egg until we die. So this increases the number of cells in the body. The second reason for cell division is replacement. So many cells in the body are replaced regularly. Here's an example. The cells lining our digestive system, these are replaced every 1 to 3 days through mitosis. Number 3, repair and maintenance. So mitosis helps repair and replace damaged cells or tissues. So if you have a cut, for example, okay, that will need repair. So it heals. So mitosis helps repair and replace damaged cells or tissues. For example, it can regenerate lost body parts in some organisms. And number 4, reproduction. So mitosis allows a single-celled organism, like bacteria, to reproduce by dividing into 2 identical cells. It also plays a role in creating new cells for reproduction in multicellular organisms. Okay, so those are your 4 reasons for cell division. Okay, continuing on page 18. Now we're looking at the process of cell division. This is page 18 of your lesson book if you're following along. So cells can replicate in 2 main ways. So we looked at mitosis, and the second one is meiosis. So first one, mitosis, is when a cell makes identical copies of its DNA and divides to create 2 new cells, and these are called daughter cells. These daughter cells are exact copies of the original cells with the same organelles and genetic information. Mitosis is how body cells or somatic cells reproduce to maintain and repair tissues. Okay, it's like when you take your original when you're photocopying and then you duplicate it. Meiosis, this is the process that creates sex cells which are used for reproduction. So in humans, this means sperm cells in males and egg cells in females are produced through meiosis. So these cells are needed for creating offspring. But in this lesson or this portion, what we're going to talk about in particular is mitosis, which is the process of a cell making an exact copy of itself. So during mitosis, as we said, the cell duplicates its DNA so that the 2 new cells, called daughter cells, are identical to the original cell. So what's happening is you start with 1 cell, you end up with 2 identical cells. So here's an example here on the bottom of the page. So you have this original cell, and then you have the duplicate, which is 2 new ones. So you start with 1 and get 2 that are the same. Same thing with, you have there, for asexual reproduction, you have strawberries and you get a runner. Potato plants, you get a tuber. Okay, it's identical. Okay, let's look at the phases of mitosis, or in other words, the stages of it. So while the process is continuous, scientists have separated into 4 phases to highlight the major changes that happen during each step. So remember, this is the process where a cell makes identical copies of its DNA and divides it into 2 new daughter cells. So for us to remember these phases, we can remember it as PMAT, which is the acronym for the phases of a cell's existence. So we have prophase for the P, metaphase for the M, anaphase for A, and telophase, so T. So P and then M, A, T, to remember the phases of mitosis. So remember we said that before it can start dividing, there's a portion where it's at its resting stage, which is interphase. That's why there's an I in this one, then PMAT. So we're going to look at each of those closely. So the first one is interphase, and that's page 19 of your lesson book. So before a cell can reproduce, it has to complete a variety of activities to get ready. So the stage of the cell cycle when a cell is preparing itself to duplicate is called interphase, because many things are happening in the cell at this time. Most of the cell's life is spent in this stage. So the getting ready phase. This is the normal state of a cell and can be thought of it as its resting phase when it's not dividing. This stage happens between 2 cell divisions and makes up about 90% of the cell's cycle. So during interphase, what the cell is doing here is it's focusing on its daily task, like surviving, gathering nutrients, storing energy, and so on. and it's preparing for the next time it will divide. So interphase is divided into 3 stages. The first is what's known as the growth phase, which is called G1. This is when a newly formed cell grows larger after division. So during this time, the cell makes proteins and increases the number of its organelles, like mitochondria, Golgi bodies, and the endoplasmic reticulum. The next phase is called the S phase, where S stands for synthesis. So during this phase, the cell copies its genetic information, or the DNA. In most cells, this happens in a short specific time during the cell cycle. The second growth phase, called G2, gives the cell more time to grow. So during this phase, the cell keeps making proteins and organelles. It needs to grow bigger to get ready for the next division. Okay, so basically what you're taking in here is that during interphase, this is when the cell is getting ready to divide. Okay, now we're getting into the first part, which is prophase. So the cell now knows it's time to divide and begins by getting everything ready. So this includes making a copy of the DNA, organizing key parts, and preparing the cell for mitosis. Okay, so the process of cell division. So during prophase, if you look at the bottom of the slide, you can see it's moving there. The chromosomes inside the nucleus get shorter, thicker, and visible. So the nucleus and its membrane break down. It releases the genetic information into the cell. So this allows the cell to organize the DNA for the next stages, where it will be evenly divided between the 2 new daughter cells. So remember, we're duplicating, so you start with 1 and you get 2 new daughter cells which are identical. Okay, that's why it says there it's evenly divided. Okay, we're getting to the M, or metaphase. So during metaphase, all the parts of the cell are in place for division. So the DNA lines up in the center of the cell along an imaginary middle axis. So the axis, see, right in the middle. Metaphase ends when all the chromosome pairs are perfectly lined up in the center. In this stage, chromosomes are fully condensed and lined up along the middle of the cell. Okay, this is called the metaphase plate. The cell spindle fibers, which are structures that help move the chromosomes, they attach to the centromere of each chromosome. So again, the best way to do this is if you're looking at the bottom of the slide, you can see how they're all lining up. This makes sure that the chromosomes are aligned properly so they can be divided evenly. Metaphase is a crucial step because it makes sure that each new cell will receive the correct set of genetic information when the cell divides. Okay, so this is very important. Anaphase. So during anaphase, the chromosomes start to separate. So you can see the spindle fibers pull the 2 sets of chromosomes, with half of them moving to one side of the cell and the other half to the opposite side. This makes sure that each daughter cell will have the correct amount of genetic material. Once the chromosomes have reached opposite sides of the cell is ready to move into the final stage of mitosis, called telophase. So once you get to telophase, the cell starts to form 2 new nuclei around the separated sets of chromosomes. Okay, so we can see we did P for prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and then we're getting to the last one, which is telophase. So now the division is almost complete. During telophase, the cell starts to form 2 nuclei around the separated sets of chromosomes. At the same time, the cell membrane begins to pinch in the middle. So you can see that pinching. Each new cell ends up with half the original cell's DNA, making them identical to the original cell. Once this is finished, you have 2 new daughter cells, each ready to start its own life cycle. Okay, so we did PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. So the last part here, after the cell goes through the 4 phases of mitosis, so you have prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, The process is just about complete, but there's still one more step that's needed to make sure that the two new daughter cells are created. This important step is called cytokinesis, and that's where the cell actually splits into two separate cells. So while the main purpose of mitosis is to divide the chromosomes equally between the two daughter cells, the cytoplasm and organelles also need to be divided, and this is where cytokinesis comes in. This is the process where the cytoplasm of the original cell is split into the two new daughter cells. So you can see here the cells have pinched apart, so now you have two separate ones, but they're identical. So cytokinesis happens at the same time as telophase. While the end result of mitosis is the same in all cells, the way the cell splits is different in plant and animal cells. So in plant cells, there's a cell plate formation that involves making a cross wall at the middle of the original cell. Golgi vesicles containing wall material fuse along, forming a disc-like structure called a cell plate. As cellulose and other fibers are deposited, the cell plate is formed, creating a boundary and a new cell wall between two new cells. Remember, that's how plant cells are different from animal cells. They have a cell wall. Whereas in cytokinesis in animal cells, the animal cells, the cell membrane pinches, forming a cleavage furrow. So it just pinches and it just separates. So this happens because a ring of proteins called the contractile ring forms across the middle of the cell after the chromosomes have separated during anaphase. The ring tightens, pulling the cell membrane toward the center, and eventually splits cell into two separate daughter cells. Okay, and then we can do key questions 36 to 40, and these are straightforward key questions. If you look at 36, it says, answer the following questions in a complete sentence. We'll just list 4 reasons that it is necessary for cells to divide. So remember, you're just listing them. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Key question 37, what is meiosis? So make sure you're reading this. This is different from mitosis. This one is asking you what is meiosis. You don't need to search it on the internet. You just have to read your lesson notes. Why is interphase important to the cell cycle? So you would write that it is important. Tell me why it is important. And finally, this is different from your last version of the 23-24 key questions. This makes it easier. You're just matching. You're matching the terms prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase with the description. So for example, the first description says the separation begins, half of the chromosomes are pulled to one side of the cell, half go the other way. Okay, so all you have to do is tell me for number 1, which phase is that of mitosis? Is that prophase, metaphase, anaphase, or telophase? Okay, so I'll give you the first one. So the one that says during where the separation begins, okay, that is anaphase. Right, and then the final key question, this is where we'll stop. Key question 40, you are just telling me what is cytokinesis. So cytokinesis means, and then tell me what it is. Okay, and this is the end of lesson 2. So next week, week 5, we will start with chemistry. Okay, thank you for joining me. Miigwech.